Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. For my very special guest today, I have Jarrod from the Fantasy Thinker. Hello, Jarrod. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really well, and just excited to be able to talk to you today and talk about fantasy, what writing, whatever comes up. I think we're gonna have a blast here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
one of the fun facts is about your channel is that when you started out, it wasn't the fantasy thinker, it was the fantasy drinker. And I remember when you were early days for your channel, you would leave comments sometimes on my channel, and always your comments went to my spam or whatever they
Right.
call it these days. And I was like, why does this guy's comments always keep going there? And I thought, is it because is his channel's called the Fantasy Drinker? I don't know. There's nothing in
Yeah.
the comments whatsoever that would that I could see that would land them in the spam folder, but there they went every time I saw it. I think I said to you once, I think maybe your
Yes.
do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah. No, that was it was fun. It was just a fantasy drink
Ah,
without
okay.
the ER. But the idea was like I'm drinking in fantasy.
Yeah,
And that was the idea. And
yeah,
I was like and I was, showing off a little bourbon or what I was, whatever flavor of the week that I was
right.
imbibing, because I was only doing it casually, just once a week thing maybe or whatever, and I wasn't even sure what I was doing
Well,
as
none of
far
us
as
are. Yeah.
reviews or what have you. So yeah, but then yeah, you mentioned that, and I just got to thinking, um I do that a lot. That's my name.
That's your name. Yeah.
So I
It's
got
obligatory.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was like, maybe there's just something about YouTube that doesn't like those two words together. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. I've seen because you see other channels that have like I've seen bourbon channels, so
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah. I don't
I don't
know.
know
I don't know.
what it was. And so yeah, I think I changed the name for the better. So
Yeah, I mean, I didn't find your comments in the spam after you changed the name, so I don't know. Weird. But did anyone else ever tell you, "Hey, your comments are ending up in my spam," or was it just me?
it was only you that informed me of that, but I don't know if like I don't know if all people's check their spam,
Yeah.
so who knows. Yeah.
Yeah. I try to check it at least every couple days because I feel bad if somebody has left me a comment and a perfectly legitimate comment
Yeah.
it ends up in my spam and I don't see it. I feel awful because someone took the time to do that. On the
Yeah.
other hand, for some reason, I haven't seen the bots lately so much, which is good. They seem to have a handle on the bots at the moment, at least.
Oh,
But
okay, good. Yeah.
people leave all kinds of horrible, rude, mean
Yeah.
with swear words and stuff, and those come through fine. But the guy from the fantasy drink leaves me a comment and with totally innocent comment and it ends up in my spam. Like, what is this? So anyway, I guess it's a perpetual issue for YouTube filtering out comments and somehow or other. But I'm glad that you left the comments, and I'm glad that I checked my spam
Yeah,
because
me too.
all these
Uh,
months later, here we are. So,
yeah, no, and thank you so much for having me on.
oh,
This was this is like one of my bucket checklists right here. Get on Dear Dr. Fantasy. So
oh.
checking that off my list.
Well, good. I mean, it's just fun to talk with my friends here on the platform, and I wish I could talk to everybody who's in this space.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm going to keep going for a while I can still do it, but
sure.
my initial goal in starting this particular series, whatever you want to call it, Dear Dr. Fantasy, was to talk to at least 300 booktubers.
Wow.
And this is episode 56, I think.
Yeah, I think
So
so.
yeah, I'm getting there.
Yeah, that's a great goal. It really
Yeah,
is. And
I know I just made up that number, but yeah.
right, yeah, but uh it's uh it's something I want to do too. I kind of like
Yeah.
I kind of took cues for my channel
Oh, we
from
all do.
you and from AP and um I'm just doing a mash of all kinds of stuff, and
That's how
I'm trying.
we all do. I look
Yeah,
at people like Mike and
yeah,
Murphy,
yeah,
others, and say, "Hey, that's a good idea. I'm going to steal it." So that's what we all do around here. But it is about the community, and it is about. I mean, you've made some really cool efforts to have your own unique kind of show series, whatever you want to call it, where you invite a guest on, and they're going to tell you about a book. So
yes,
I tortured you by making you read some Old English poems for that segment.
yeah. But
But
that
I
was so
love,
great. That was so great because it was so
yeah,
unique,
okay,
and so
yeah.
that I love that when somebody brings something unique like that that just makes it that much better.
Well,
It's real
good,
cool. Yeah,
good. I'm glad that you could have such a positive attitude about that. But no, you've had some great discussions with people as a result of starting up that, discussion series, let's call it that. Yeah. So,
yeah, yeah. Yep. Book think.
how many have you had now? How many,
I just did number 9
okay,
with Raf. You
with
know
Wrath. Cool.
Raf, yeah. So
Nice.
that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, because we are here to learn from each other, to get good recommendations, and I assume that's part of the motivation for you doing that particular series, right? Is to say,
Yeah.
reach out to
Yeah.
somebody, hey, what do you want to read with me, and let's discuss it on my channel. Yeah,
Yeah. It convinced me to read something cool. Yeah.
yeah, nice, nice. What are some of your favorite things you picked up as a result of the nine you've done so far?
Um well, I read let's see the because of quite a few of them were discussions of books I already read, so
Uh-huh. Okay.
that was okay.
Count those. You can count
Um
those.
and but I read a historical fiction by Amy Amitov Ghosh.
Amitabh Ghosh. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Sea of Poppies.
Yeah.
That was fascinating because
Who had you reading that?
that was our friend Vasha from
Okay, nice.
reading by the Rainy Mountain, right? And
Yep.
so that was fascinating because that was unique, that was different. It
Yeah.
wasn't in the sphere of what I was reading at the time, And I enjoyed it. It was quite the experience reading
Cool.
that type of historical fiction. Very 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 good writer, that guy. So
Yeah. I had
yeah, it
not
was
read Amitabh Ghosh yet myself, but my wife has read several of his books, and likes his writing a lot. Yeah.
oh good, good, yeah. And I'm starting Embassy Town next week
Oh, okay.
based upon Angela's recommendation.
So you're gonna have
So
Angela, okay, for that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
So
Okay. Good for
yeah,
you.
yeah, it's good. It's good stuff.
And if we could broaden this out, what are some of the finds that you have been excited about as a result of starting your channel? What are some of that's some just whatever sticks out to you from the last couple of years of reading and doing this? What are some of your like, wow, I'm so glad I found this book or series.
Yeah. Well, the main thing, the biggest one I would say is, of course, Wars of Light and Shadow by
Yeah.
Janie Wirtz. That series so far has just blown me away. And
Yeah, it's
it's
good stuff.
really, and it's really got me in touch with a lot of people that I wanted to meet, and I'm so glad I have,
Including Jenny
um,
Wirtz, I think.
including
Yes.
Janie Wirtz. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
because you
great.
went to ICFA, didn't you?
I did. I went to ICFA this year, and that's a huge story in and by itself because I had a great time.
Well, let's have
And
it. We want the story. So
yeah,
everybody who doesn't know, ICFA is the International Conference for the Fantastic and the Arts. And it is an academic conference, so it's not a place where you go dressed up as your favorite fantasy character or something like
right.
that. That's a different thing. That's a convention. This
Okay.
is
Yeah, it's not a convention. Yeah.
yeah, primarily just an academic thing, but it's unique as a conference because a lot of writers do go there. And it's a really cool place where people, academics, writers, whoever wants to go can go. But
Yeah.
it's a lot of discussion, a lot of panels and reading papers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you went this year
Yeah.
to the latest ICFA, which I couldn't go to. I would have loved to have been there, but
Well, I thought I saw you there.
oh. there was there was an imposter.
Yeah.
Imposter. there, and Jenny Wirtz has something to do with that as well.
Yes, she did.
And my nemesis. So yeah. But anyway,
That
I want to
was
hear spill the beans. What did you love about ICFA this year?
there was a lot to love. It was actually quite overwhelming when I got there at first because I was like, where do I start? What do I do? Um, but the main thing I would say about the conference was everybody was extremely nice.
Yeah,
Everybody I ran into was just so polite and so nice, so welcoming, that it made it easier to be in a strange place with all these strange people I never met,
yeah.
except a couple online, and so finally I got to meet AP in person, and that was great. He was a wonderful guide, whole
Every bit as
place.
nefarious in person as he is online. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah, you could see the nefarious oozing out of him, but a Professor Fireball, going off. But um,
Right.
no, he was great. He was great, um, and of course he introduced me to Ian Esselmont and Steven Erickson, and I got to meet Stephen Donaldson. It was fantastic.
You
Um,
got to meet Steven Erickson, Stephen Donaldson, and Ian Esselmont. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. So nice.
yeah, and it was mind blowing. Really, it was.
Yeah.
And of course, then Janie Wirth showed up later on
Yeah.
towards the end of the week,
With her
and
husband, Don Mates.
with Don Mates, who was just
Yeah.
fantastic. I actually really liked talking to Don. He was a
He's a really cool guy.
he's yeah, he's awesome, and they all are. They all were awesome, and and of course, you know, Janie pulled your head out of the box. So that
No.
that was a trip. That was just like it was almost like she was presenting the conquered head to the nefarious critical dragon out of the box like a TV show or something.
With
So
no blood dripping down
yeah,
off.
no, there was
Yeah.
none of the gore, but uh yeah,
Fortunately, this one is still attached to the neck.
yes, and we want to keep it that way. So
I hope so, for at least a little while. Yeah.
yeah, but no, it was a great time. And it was also great just meeting all these students who were there
Yeah.
giving their giving their thesis,
Yep.
and presenting their information, and um really, they you can tell they pour their heart and soul into these things.
Yeah.
They're really passionate about it all. And so I went to quite a few conferences, seminars, that um that I wouldn't normally look into, but I couldn't, and there's a whole bunch of seminars going at the same time, so you got to
Oh
pick
yeah,
and
you can't
choose.
go to them all,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
you got to pick and choose what you want. And
Yeah.
so I picked one on like 19th century, not 19th century. I picked one on fairy tales and their origins, and
Cool.
how the Grimm brothers went about writing everything down and spreading all this stuff,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
other people as well, some forgotten people that you didn't hear about normally,
Yep.
and it was just fascinating, and there was some other ones too. And I went to the one that Stephen Donaldson did on writing,
Oh,
which is
he
just
presented at this
he
conference.
he moderated a
Oh,
panel
he moderated. Okay.
of
Okay.
of
Okay.
writers,
Yeah.
and that was just outstanding. And
Wow. Do
he
you remember
is
who the other writers were in the panel? Or yeah,
I'm
okay.
terrible at names, so
Yeah. Okay.
I don't remember,
But Donaldson was moderating.
but
Wow.
he was moderating, and that was just great. Uh, he he's a fount of wisdom when it comes to writing and stuff.
Oh my goodness. I love his essays on epic fantasy.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so it was great talking to him. He's actually quite the character. He's a lot of fun to to
Yes.
to
Yeah.
talk to. Yeah.
He's a smart
Um,
fellow. Plus, he has a sense of humor. Yeah.
yes, he does. Yeah, yeah, and so it was just stuff like that. You're getting all this knowledge and wisdom thrown at you,
Yeah.
and I'm just trying to as much as I can while I'm there, and and plus I'm just meeting these literary heroes of mine, really,
Yeah.
that I've been reading and enjoying their works for the last 20 years or so, at least. and Donaldson even longer, you know. So
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
and so you know, and it was like I said, it's overwhelming. But I am blogging about it on pagechewing.com.
Nice.
So I've started that. I got one episode up right now, and I'll continue on to tell more about that on that blog.
Oh,
And
that's great. Good, good, good.
yeah,
You're part of the page chewing crew now.
yeah, I'm quite involved with a lot of stuff going on in it. But that website has tons just going on. You know, the website and the forum and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Steve really runs a great website there,
Yes. Yes. So
and
yeah, yeah. Steve is great, and of course you have Taylor and PL,
yeah, yeah.
and you're involved now. Who else is involved? Are there other people involved
Well,
in?
I'm just involved with like a few of the podcasts that are going some
Uh-huh.
on that on there.
Okay.
Um, Vasha is involved heavily with page chewing, and
Good. Good.
she
Good.
uh, she has me reading the you know the sci-fi masterworks series. So
Oh,
we do a book a month from that series, and
cool.
we talk about that. And we're also involved in a podcast called Adaptations.
What was that
Um,
called again?
Speculative speculations.
Speculative speculations. Okay.
Yeah, it's quite the mouthful, but it's accurate. Uh, and so we just finished like the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer, and
Wow.
we read it like a 80 pages a week or something like that, and we talk about it.
I've heard that Vandermeer's writing is pretty weird.
It's interesting. It's
Yeah. I
like
mean, weird in a good way. When you say
yeah,
weird in
it is.
fantasy context, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's good. It's it's sci-fi series, and he's a good writer. He's very
Yeah.
it's weird, but it's very on purpose, and it's very
Yeah.
it's fascinating series.
Cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
So we're doing that, and of course, then we got the Wars of Light and Shadow going on,
Yes. Where
which
are you now in that? Where are you?
well, we're it's kind of funny because we're right with you guys, with you
Are
and
you?
Joanna and AP.
I thought
Like
you were ahead of us.
we're heading into Peril's Gate now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny how that worked out
Yeah.
because we didn't plan any of that. You
No.
know, it
Yeah.
just seems to be like we're kind of keeping pace with you guys, and it's really fascinating watching the discussions and
Yeah. It's
stuff like
cool.
that.
It's really
Yeah,
cool, and it's a series that really deserves to be shouted about and spread
yeah,
around, and it's brilliant stuff. 5 books in, and it's my actually sixth Jenny Wirtz book because I did read To Ride Hell's Chasm as well.
yeah,
It's just tremendous what she's doing in here. It's gonna go down, in my opinion, as one of the most vast and ambitious and accomplished fantasy series you could ever read. It's just that big, and it's both in its scope, but also in its depth,
yeah.
which is, there are some just amazing themes being explored and so deftly in the series that I'm having a blast. Really, every
Me
time I
too.
read another book in the series, I'm like, maybe this one's my favorite now. So
Yeah, it's panning out like that. I get the idea, but
Carol's Gate is a big one too, I think.
is yeah,
Yeah,
and and it just seems like the great thing about her writing is you can read it, you can go back and read it, get something completely different out of a chapter.
yeah,
Like it's a good thing we're having these discussions because
yeah,
like there's so much you can miss, and you have these discussions. You go, oh yeah, I didn't think about that, and somebody else has, and
yeah. Oh, that
so
happens to me every time. Believe
yeah,
me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You got to talk to Jenny Wirtz at ICFA, and was there anything surprising about her in person, or was she pretty much exactly what you expected?
No, she is exactly what she is what you get. Yeah, basically, she's yeah. If you ever speak, you guys have spoken to her online,
Yeah,
and I have too, and she's just she's just great. She is,
I believe that she is a force of nature. Yeah.
yeah, she's and she's a blast to talk to. She's so
Oh, she's
knowledgeable,
so much fun.
and
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it was fantastic meeting her in person.
Yeah. I
And
did meet her myself at the ICFA that I attended 2 years before.
yeah,
So,
yeah, good,
and
good.
yeah, she's just wonderful. Yeah. So every bit as dynamic as she seems online,
Yeah,
actually. Yeah. Yep. And so, I mean, it's not fair that one person could be so knowledgeable in so many different realms either. Uh,
I know.
I,
She's got a lot of experience under her belt, and she's got a lot of
yeah.
knowledge,
Yeah.
and she uses it very well. Like this,
Yes.
it's hard to, it would be hard. Like this, like you said, this is probably one of the greatest series that's ever gonna be written.
Yeah.
Uh, it's because you got very few like this. You know,
Right.
I would say Malazan
I would put Malazan up there, maybe
and
Realm of the
this
Elderlings. Yeah.
and and I haven't read, I'm only in the first book of Realm of the Elderlings,
Okay.
um, but I'll take your word for that. That's another one that's in that category. But there's not
Yeah.
much else
I mean, there's
in that category. No.
Wheel of Time is lengthwise, it's up there, but and I don't
Yeah,
mean in any way whatsoever. I think Wheel of Time is more, let's say, accessible, would be one way to put it. It's a great
yeah.
series. I'm very
It
glad I read it. And Jordan definitely does explore some really cool themes. But I'd say its virtues are, for me anyway, the world building is just tremendous in Wheel of Time. It's great world building. And there, like I said, there are definitely themes, but I don't know. I would say it's not as theme driven as Malazan or Wars of Light and Shadow
yeah.
and that sort of
No,
thing.
it was great when it was coming out. I read Wheel of Time as it was coming
Oh, you've
out,
read Wheel
and
of Time, yeah? Okay.
yeah, yeah, and but it doesn't feel as planned as these other
Uh-huh.
series do. You know?
I think with Wheel of Time, initially was going to be a lot shorter, and
Yeah, that's what
then
it feels like. You
the
know?
books were doing well, and I think that the publisher said to Jordan, "Hey, we want to, bloat this a little bit and make more books," and hence what people call the
Yeah.
slog, I guess. But
Well,
yeah,
it, yeah. Some people say slog, but when you were reading it as it came out, it wasn't a slog
I didn't feel a slog when I was reading it either.
because you're eagerly waiting that next installment. You know,
Uh,
and so
I didn't read it the way you did when they were coming out. I read it all in within almost a year, just before the last book came out. So I was able to read the last book right when it came out. I was ready for it.
yeah,
So that worked out really well for me. When
yeah,
Sanderson finished the last book, it was like I got the moment it got to the library where I was the first person to check it out. So
nice, yeah.
that worked
No,
out well.
but I could see that if people were binge reading it,
Hmm.
how you could get a little burnt out on it, just
I enjoyed
because,
it for the most
you
part.
know,
I always felt I've never felt anything that I would have called the slog, but I always felt like I feel like these books could be a bit shorter, each of them. That there could be some, chopping down of stuff, and I might have enjoyed the series more. And whether you do that by having fewer books or by making each book a little slimmer, doesn't make a difference to me. But obviously, yeah, it's a beloved series. A
yeah,
lot of
no,
people, it's their favorite of all time,
yeah.
it's great.
And I think that generally opened the door for other series to be long too.
Yeah.
You know, so it definitely is a pillar of the fantasy
Oh, for sure,
canon.
for
You know,
sure.
so
Yeah,
it's good for that. Yeah,
yeah, I totally agree. That's a good way to put it. It's a pillar, all right. But and in terms of the vastness of the world building, it's one of the very best, I would say.
it
It's just
and
really.
a lot of cool stuff happens too. So,
Yes, the character arcs are pretty
yeah,
pretty amazing as well. When you look at where those rustic kind of characters began, the naive youths that they were, and to where they end up in the end is it's really quite enough. They have tremendous arcs as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. So yeah. So you are you read Donaldson a ways back as well,
Mhm.
and that is another series, Thomas Covenant. Would you put that up there as well with Wars of Light and Shadow and Malazan and all of that?
Yeah, it's especially the first six. Um, those are like my favorite is the second Chronicles of Tom
Uh-huh.
Covenant. I
Okay.
really love. At the time, that was for me. Read that was ever. This was before Mel's and Eve came out, and um, so uh, that really cemented my love for fantasy as literature. You know,
Wow.
um,
Yeah.
it it really did, and it was a growing point for me as a reader reading
Uh-huh.
that series. Because previously I had was really focused on D&D novels
Uh-huh.
and that genre, that sphere of fantasy literature.
Just kind of like
And
R.A. Salvatore kind of books.
yeah, yeah, and Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms and those books there.
Yeah.
Um,
Which are fun, you know.
and they are, oh yeah, they're fun and some of them are pretty good. Some
Uh-huh.
not so much, but uh, but the but branching out uh into other fantasy, it was Donaldson that really I, was a light bulb went off where I was like, wow, something can be really deeper here. Something can be
Mm.
really important really, to literature, to exploring the human psyche and exploring humanity.
Yeah.
And so and that was before I even went to college. And because I went later as an adult. And so
Uh-huh.
um and I think that helped me when I went to college because it made me more um,
Uh-huh.
receptible to what they were going to be for me. Courses,
That's fantastic. I really love that. The idea that reading Stephen Donaldson's books, the Thomas Covenant books, would have opened your mind in a way that enabled you to feel um, not just ready, but perhaps eager to learn. You know, that's just fantastic. I love that. And I teach at a community college myself, and I have to say, some of my most motivated and organized and just highly achieving students are the older students who come back after, they've had some experience in the world. So I'm a big fan of community colleges for that reason that there are places that exist where, it's wonderful to see a student who comes as in their mid 20s or their 30s or I've had students in their 60s and the motivation and that spark that's there that like that just it's hard to explain why or how that happens, but I feel like it can happen to people at different points in their lives.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
for me, I can very distinctly remember being a junior in high school and something just woke up in me and I wanted to learn. And before that, I was not a bad student or anything like that, but I just, I thought I had to do it, so I did it. I was just doing it out of obligation. But then my junior year of high school, I had a history teacher, AP US history teacher who just somehow his enthusiasm for the subject was contagious. And I
Hmm.
suddenly just was like, I love this. I actually love this.
Yeah.
And I just started to want to learn everything. And just that carried me through college and graduate school. But that spark can happen for people at a different point in their
Hmm.
lives. And you can't
Yeah.
tell. Maybe it's the Thomas Covenant series that sets it off, or maybe it's a particular teacher or whatever it might be. But you're just ready, and it's wonderful. So you went back to school at a later age, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I was because I joined the Air Force after I got out of high school. So
okay.
I
That's
was in the
you know what? It's
military.
often the students who've been in the military
Yeah.
who will come back after they're done with their service and they are so organized and so mature, and they always tell me I was an idiot in high school. I never would have
Oh,
done well in college.
that's me. Yeah, that's me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's funny because you ask your standard question on this show, right?
Yeah, I will be asking you, of course, but yeah.
And but I was not a reader when I was a kid
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
I like a occasional comic book or something like that, you know. But I, and of course whatever I was forced to read in high school, and where I was, and the stuff I read in high school, it wasn't that I didn't like it. It
Yeah.
was okay. I read Animal Farm and I read other standard high school texts, and but I just never um like grabbed me. It never made me a reader. And I was always interested in other stuff,
Yeah.
and I didn't become a reader until and I was really bored. So I uh I ended up picking up a book about Led Zeppelin. It's like one of my favorite bands,
Okay.
and
Cool.
I ended up reading a biography of them. And when I was in the bookstore, that's when I noticed there's books there based upon one of my favorite hobbies was Dungeons and Dragons.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, Dragonland. It's a Dungeons and Dragons book. I gotta read that. So
Uh,
my first fantasy novel was Dragonlance, the first book in Dragonlance.
all right. We're gonna get the full story here. I'm gonna ask you the standard question.
Yeah.
But we'll take a brief break here before that. I feel like this is a good spot to take a break. So, all right, we're back, and it is time for the standard question here on Dear Dr. Fantasy, which is going on the premise that you are what you read, Jared. Well, let's get the story. You began to tell us actually a little bit about your reading journey, and I'd love to hear more. We've already heard some of the important reads in your life, but we can get this all out in a perhaps a slightly more organized fashion here now. But this is really cool. I love it. I love hearing about the moments in a person's life when they just felt that magic, when they've just felt like this has opened a new world for me, and I want to read. I want to just get all the stories I can, experience that catharsis, that
Hmm.
wonderful, So, would you like to take us on this?
Yeah. Well, like I said before, Dragonlance was a thing that got me into reading fantasy. Um,
Cool.
I was fascinated by it, and I look back at it now and I realize it was just basically their game put into novel form.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
How old were you
but
at this point?
I was 19,
Okay.
yeah, at this point, and I was already a gamer. I was, involved in a couple of role-playing games, Dungeons and
You're a
Dragons.
DM, is that right? You've been a
I
DM?
am,
Yeah. Nice.
and yeah, so I do that, and that's creating stories in its own way. Um, Dungeon Mastery.
Absolutely. Sure
Yep.
is. Yeah.
And
One of my favorite
and
writers, and one that you like as well, Mark Lawrence. I think a lot of his earlier like interest in fantasy came from gaming and DMing, and he did some kind of like this was before the internet, obviously. So like
yeah,
in the mail kind of thing where
yes,
you've
I've
heard
heard of that.
him talk about this, right? Yeah,
Oh
like
yeah.
he would have stuff written out for people participating in this like game, but you participate by the mail.
Yep.
It sounds amazing actually, but I think that's just some of his earliest writing experience. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. You're
Yeah,
a
no,
DM.
that's something I thought about getting into at one point too, but I
Wow.
never actually delved into it. But
Huh.
because I never had a problem finding a gaming group. Uh,
Okay.
so I think the mail thing was for people who needed to find people.
Perhaps.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
You were D&D player from how old were you?
um, my my friends and my brother and I started when I was like probably 30.
Okay. Yeah, I
Uh,
was similar. I was probably 12 and I played all
yeah,
the way through high school, but stopped when I went to college.
yeah.
Yeah.
we didn't play that much when once we got a little older, like 16 or whatever. But
Uh-huh.
then when I got in the Air Force, like I said,
Yeah.
I was bored and I started looking into the books, and then I got some people together in the barracks, and
Nice.
so that's and then I never stopped since then. I'm still played today, and
How cool. Yeah.
yeah, so and we have a regular group that we do it all online nowadays because ever since the pandemic, um,
Huh.
we found that it's actually more convenient to do it online than it is trying to get people together in one place. But
Wow. And are you always the DM or does someone else in your group do that
uh,
too?
mostly, but every once in a while, my brother takes over or one of my other friends. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
And these days, I mostly do published stuff, you know,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. The
because I don't have to.
modules. Do they still
Yeah,
call them modules? I don't know. I haven't played.
modules. Yep, yeah, they
Yeah.
do. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
and or campaigns they call them,
Okay.
Uh, but
Okay.
the my because it takes time to write stuff if you're gonna
Yeah.
write
Yeah.
stuff for but and we're all busy people. uh but anyways, I was reading Dragonlance
Yeah.
and I read all those, was fascinated by it, and I read whatever Forgotten Realms books were out at the time, which wasn't many. Um and of course I ran out of D&D related
I
novels.
mean, there's a lot, but
There's a
yeah. Okay.
lot now, but back then there wasn't.
Uh-huh.
And this is the 80s, and
Right.
uh so I just started looking. I was like, what am I going to read next? And kind of um I'm kind of OCD a little bit. So I was like, oh, I'll just start with the A's in the bookstore.
You started with the A's.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just went to the first books on the shelf and I read Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That's
That
not
was a
bad. That worked
that
out
was
pretty
that was
well.
the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it. Was I never read a book where I laughed so much,
42,
and
man. Yeah.
yeah, yep, that's the answer.
Yeah.
And but of course he only had a few books out at the time, right? So I quickly went through those, and
Okay.
the next one was Robert Adams.
Oh my
So
goodness.
so and that he put out this series called The Horse Clans,
Okay.
and that was fascinating because he incorporated a lot of Greek language in
Oh, okay.
his
I read it.
story, and it's like a post-apocalyptic fantasy type story,
Okay.
where this is these immortal characters that because of Holocaust they go to. I don't remember exactly, um, but it all resorted back to swords and spears, rather than modern. And uh, so it was but he uses a lot of Greek language in there, and I found that fascinating because I wasn't exposed to that before,
Okay.
and it was interesting trying to figure all that out um and all the weird terminology that wasn't used to, you know, and so that was cool, and then
Did you skip Richard Adams?
um Richard,
Watership Down?
I don't know, maybe I did.
Okay.
I mean, bookstores weren't as stacked back then as they are
Yeah,
today, so maybe he wasn't up there yet.
maybe. Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, you gotta get all the Adamses before you can move on.
right. Um, yeah, I quickly outgrew my fascination with the alphabet.
Okay.
After because Robert Adams had like 20 novels or something like
Oh
that
my
out, and
goodness.
yeah,
Okay.
so um, and then and I read some Piers Anthony after that, and
Oh my goodness. Okay.
yeah, and I forget how I got into Donaldson, but
I mean,
I
you
think
that's D, so you eventually would have
yeah,
gotten it.
I
Yeah.
I eventually skipped some letters. I eventually was like, all right, I gotta branch out a little bit here from
Okay.
from the alphabet. It was just a place to
You
start.
let go of the OCD at a
I
certain
did, yeah.
point. Okay.
Uh, and so and finally I read Donaldson, because I had heard a lot of good critical praise for it. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
I was like, okay, because after reading some of the other stuff, I was like, all right, what's actually really supposed to be really good?
Yeah.
And so then, so I started branching out reading them. And
Yeah. Cool. I've only read Lord Fowle's Bane, and that was when I was a teenager, so that was a long time ago. I need to
yeah,
read. That's a big gap for me. I need to read more Donaldson. So that's something I want to do on the channel probably in 2025, I'm guessing. Um,
yeah.
get
Eh,
back into that. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody talks about the Covenant series, but he actually has a lot of other great
He
stuff
does. Yeah. Yeah. But
that's
that's where I
that's
want to
out
start.
there.
Yeah.
So
What's your
um,
favorite other stuff by him then?
the Gap Cycle is incredible. That's
Okay.
his science fiction series.
Uh-huh.
And I love his most recent series, the Great Gods War.
Okay.
Um,
Uh,
and uh, and he also has outstanding short story collection.
uh-huh.
I want to read a short story here and there. That he
Yeah.
has a few collections of short stories.
Cool.
But yeah, so where was I? All right,
Donaldson.
so I'm in the Air Force and I'm reading as much as I can. I was I was just like mesmerized by all these books.
Yeah.
I'm loving them, and I couldn't stop. I was reading at stop signs, driving a car. I
Oh
couldn't stop,
no.
and
Picking up the book.
I recommended kids, but so I just took the books everywhere I went, and um
Wow.
and so I got a lot of reading done because then by that time like TSR, the Dungeons and Dragons people, they
Uh-huh.
actually started really ramping up their and so there was a lot to read.
Cool.
And so I never ran out of books. Uh,
That's good. I
uh,
mean, that's a wonderful problem. Never running out of
yeah, but because of my focus on the D&D novels, there was actually a lot of stuff I didn't get to that classic fantasy that I never got to. You
sure.
know, I never got to the Raymond Feist.
I
I
was just
never,
gonna say Feist, yeah, Riftbound.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I never got to the Le Guin. I never, uh, until more recently. And then, so there was a lot of stuff I didn't get to. Well, um,
Yeah.
and when I finally got out of the Air Force, I that's when I said, okay, I'm going to use this because Massachusetts has a program for veterans, and so I was able to go to the state college. Um,
It was paid for, in other words. Yeah. Gesundheit. Yeah.
excuse me. Um, and so I was able to, get into a program. It was a, night school.
Yep.
Uh, so when I got into that, the this is funny because I oh, what, uh, I I did terrible in English in high school.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I did, and like math was my thing in high school.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, my SAT scores were like opposite poles.
Yeah.
And but when I because I had all that exposure to literature when I was in the Air Force, really loved it. I
Wow.
was like, okay, that's be a English to do a English degree.
Is that what you did? Your degree in English literature?
And I was talking to the person there who was helping me fill this stuff out.
Uh-huh.
I said, well, I really like history too, and because that love of history came from Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of historical inferences in a lot of the D&D material.
Sure.
Um, and so whether they're not accurate,
Yeah.
but
They
they're
don't
there.
have to be, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it sparked the interest. And so I ended up doing a dual concentration major of English and history.
Good for you. Wow.
And not have no idea what I was getting into. But uh, and then the second class I ever took was the short story.
Wait,
That was
say it again. What was the class?
the short story.
Oh, short story. Okay, yeah.
That was the name of the class. And um, this, this professor I had was amazing.
Huh.
And this is the thing about amazing professors that you were saying before, about having that teacher with a real passion.
Yep.
Um, and I passed in a paper, and he gave it back the first one, and it's all mocked up. It was red all over this thing, right?
Sure. Sure.
Uh, and he pointed at me, and he pointed at like three or four other people, and he said, "You're staying after class." And I was like, "Oh no, what did I do?" So, and he explained to me more about how to write and structure of sentences, and he taught me more about the English language in 40 minutes than I learned out through all high school.
Yep.
And I was amazed. I was like stunned at how he did that.
Yep. Well,
And
and part of it is his passion and expertise. Another part of it probably is you were ready. You were receptive.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I was ready. And from that point on, like that class, I got like a B, whatever, from
Which
that
is a
point on,
major accomplishment. Yeah. Yeah.
I never got lower than an A.
Awesome.
And it
Awesome.
was, it was because of that class, it was because of that professor.
Yep.
And it was just awesome. And he sparked my interest in reading more.
Yep.
I read a lot of, literature, standard literature, during college, but I also took a lot of classes like anything that had fantasy or science fiction related or horror story or whatever, anything that was on those lines. And I took a lot of medieval courses in history and stuff like
Cool.
that.
I
I
approve.
loved,
Yeah.
I'm sure you would. I love medieval history, and so I took a lot of that stuff. And the main thing that once it took me almost 10 years to get my degree,
Uh-huh.
because you go
Doing
in
it by night school.
night school, yeah, and I got kids, I got Bob, and so
You're working
um,
full time and doing
yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah, and trying to get by, and
Yeah.
so it took me that long, but the main thing that stuck with me when I finished the degree is I actually just didn't stop. I still kept reading history books.
Yep.
I
Yep.
still kept trying to find really great fantasy books to read, and I just never stopped learning. I
That's the secret, Jarrod. One of the reasons I love being an educator, one of the reasons I love being an English professor is I get to keep learning all the time. It's the perfect job for somebody who wants to just keep learning and learning, and that keeps me going. I love it. And we are, we can be if we choose perpetual students.
Yeah,
I think of myself as a student of literature, a student of fantasy. Always, I will always be that, and I just enjoy learning so much. It gives my life purpose in a way that nothing else has. So it's really really cool to hear you say all that. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's kind of
yeah.
why we were here on BookTube.
Yeah,
That's why we're here. We love this so much that we love doing this in a space where other people who are as crazy as we are as passionate as we are can be we can be in conversation with them, and this is what it's all about. And it's fantastic. I've never found anything better than this sort of thing. So yeah.
yeah. That's great, and I totally like. I have so much respect for what you do as a teacher, passing on this knowledge, passing on this stuff. It's just amazing to me, and I wish there was more room in this world for more of that kind of teaching. you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
because it's, you hear about so many cuts to education funding and especially the arts, which
Yeah. Oh, we're in a crisis right
I
now.
think it's,
Higher
yeah,
education. Yeah.
I think it's tragic. I
Yeah.
really wish that it was going the other way, and it should be. And
It
because
should be. But the problem from my perspective, and of course I'm speaking as a faculty member, but the problem from my perspective is that administrations have become just so corporate minded. And it is really at a point where I feel that profit has completely usurped learning as the primary reason for the existence of universities in
yep,
our country. Not so much at the elite institutions because they're still doing it right, but unfortunately at a lot of the other places where a lot of people who come from more working class backgrounds are going to be studying. The administrations have given up on the students. They've essentially said, yeah, they don't need philosophy, they don't need literature, they don't need history. They're just going to get these factory jobs anyway, so let them have what they want. They disguise it as that. They say,
yeah,
oh, it's this, it's let the customer have what they want. And they actually, I've heard administrators refer to students as customers, and that makes me
oof,
sick. That makes me sick.
yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible. So yeah, I believe that we are at a point where we're seeing a real bifurcation in education, where you're having education at the elite institute, so-called elite institutions, uh, where they're still teaching them philosophy and they're still making them well-rounded people. They're learning history and languages and other things, along with whatever, engineering or, but at the community colleges, where places like where I teach, or the less prestigious state schools and so on and so forth, they're giving up on the students. They're essentially saying, yeah, let them have what they want. They don't want to learn philosophy. They don't want to learn a language. Just give them their certificate and get the customer out the door so we can get the next one in. And I just feel like this is the worst thing that's happened in education in the last 100 years.
Yeah,
It's really,
I agree. Yeah,
yeah, it's really awful in my
yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
Like critical thinking's gone out the window.
That's the thing. What
If
people
it's
don't
if
seem to
it's not,
understand
yeah,
that when you're learning philosophy, when you're learning literature, you're learning how to think. That's the thing. You're learning how to think.
yep.
And it's just, I feel very sad about the state of higher education these days.
Yeah. I don't even think my program that I took is available in
Wow.
at UMass Lowell, and it's it yeah, it teaches critical thinking, and it also, and it teaches you more how to learn how to learn, you know,
Yeah, that's right.
and
Sets you up for life. Yeah.
yeah, it does, and
Yeah,
it's like my
we're at my own institution. We are teaching, I'd say probably 3 to 5 times fewer literature courses than we were even a decade ago. Um,
yeah,
um,
yeah, I don't doubt it. I
yeah.
don't doubt it.
And the fantasy novels course that I used to teach used to get really good enrollment. I can't teach it anymore because the students can't put it anywhere in their curriculum. It doesn't fit any longer because of administrative decisions, state level decisions,
Hmm.
people in suits deciding, these students don't need to know literature or philosophy or history anymore. There was talk even of doing away with any history requirement at all. Like, really? I mean, civic knowledge is
Oh,
already at an all-time low, and you want to get rid of any history requirement. Okay, great. Yeah, it was just,
uh,
yeah.
that hurts.
Yeah.
Oh, that hurts.
And I know there are different parts of the world where they have education systems that will siphon off a student much earlier. Like the American higher education is different from, like, say, many European countries, where at a much earlier age you'll be put on a certain track. Like, okay, you're going to be, in a trade. Therefore, this is what you're going to learn, and they might not. So what we do here in the States is I don't know if it's unusual, but it's different from a lot of places in that we do emphasize a broad education in the first couple years of a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
You're learning things that are not within your major. And I personally am a big fan of that philosophy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you should learn everything you can.
Yeah.
You should have a general knowledge of all the subjects that are out there.
Yep.
It keeps your options open, and it keeps your mind expanded.
Yep.
Um,
Now, the
you
other
know,
side of that, of course, is the student who says, well, I just want to be an engineer. Why are you making me learn a language? Why are you making me study literature? I'm not interested in that. And
because it'll come into play. That's what they get. It will. They
yeah,
might not think it at the time, but it will eventually come into play.
it does. And even if you're an engineer, you might have to communicate with people.
Mm.
If you've studied literature or speech or what have you, it might be useful to you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of students don't see that, and they just want to get their piece of paper that will allow them to access to this job, which is also,
Yeah. I mean, you know, you want to make a living, and you want that. That unfortunately that piece of paper gets you in a lot of doors.
yep,
Or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. And it's just it's kind of it's just you wonder how much are we sacrificing on one end to pay the other end, and where's the balance?
yep, yep, yep. Well, it's a topic I could go on and on and on about. But yeah, it's for me the and many people will disagree with me perhaps, but I think there are certain realms where we shouldn't be making the priority money. Okay. Like education is one.
Education. Yeah.
For me, healthcare is another one.
Yep.
Again, and people are going to disagree with me, but I feel like human lives are more important than money. Sorry, that's just how I feel. I don't feel like we should be looking at medicine. And I know people will say, well, you need innovation. People have to have some kind of motive for developing new pharmaceuticals, et cetera, et cetera. But there are plenty of countries where, there's free healthcare, for example, and free education and that sort of thing. And we could definitely do that if we wanted to, but we don't. We make we make it a for profit thing. And my argument is by making profit the primary motive, you are actually harming the learning. Because if making money is more important than learning, you're going to take shortcuts in order to
Mm.
make more money. And in higher education, one of the most notorious shortcuts is the hiring of adjuncts. These are part-time, professors. They don't have full-time jobs. They have no benefits. They get tiny, just their salaries are just dismally low. And they're essentially there's an army of exploited adjuncts out there. I don't think anything like it exists in any other industry in the United States. And it's just horrible. And because they have no actual full-time job, no benefits, they have to work all these gigs. They have to teach at like 7 different places
Mm.
just to pay their bills. And they have no office. So you can't tell me that a person who's teaching in 7 different places and is teaching 10 courses a semester is going to be able to do as good a job with their students. So
Right.
you are affecting the education of those students by having this system in place. Yes, it would be more expensive to hire these people full time and give them actual jobs, but the students would be learning more if you did it right. Yeah, you wouldn't make as much money, but I think the learning is more important in this case. You're investing in humans. Let's put it that way,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Yep. All
uh,
good points.
I'm gonna get off my soapbox now. Let's talk about fantasy, man.
Yeah.
So what are you reading
Yeah.
now that's exciting? What are you reading now that's got you, really
Well,
me-
a book we both share a love for, I think. I'm reading a
Oh,
book that
yes.
broke the world.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm gonna start in about a week. Yep.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through, and I'm just loving it. Uh,
By the time this video's out, we both will have read it and probably will have a discussion organized for it. So
yes, great. That'd be awesome. Yeah. And I would love to talk about that series. So far, the second book is living up to the first, just so you know.
good.
So
So happy to hear it.
something to look forward to.
The book that wouldn't burn was my favorite book of last year.
Yeah, I know. And it was one of mine too, one of my top five. Yeah. So it was fantastic. And of course, we said earlier, I'm reading The Wars of Light and Shadow.
Yep.
Um, I'm actually in the middle of rereading Malazan.
Okay,
Um,
cool. Where are you?
I'm on Dust of Dreams right now.
Oh wow,
Um,
it's done.
and well, I'm reading
That's fun
Esamons
stuff too.
as
Good,
well,
good, good.
all combined. And so
How many rereads have you done now?
this is my second. This is only my second read.
Okay, okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah, because I didn't read Malazan till not till like 2011 or so.
Okay,
The first time I read it, and so it was already all out, and um,
yeah,
and it took me quite a few years. I took my time with it, and
yeah,
not a
understandable.
series you can rush through.
I didn't rush through it either. Yeah.
Yeah, and and going through it the first time, now that I'm reading a second time, there was so I didn't get so much I missed, and there was no YouTube back then for me to
Yep.
refer to as get some help, and
Same for me on the first
yeah,
read. Yep.
yeah, and um, reading it now, this reread, I'm not a big rereader at all.
Uh-huh.
I don't reread that often.
Yeah.
Um, and like I've read The Lord of the Rings twice. Um, and I've read the first two Covenant series twice.
Okay.
Um, and that's about it. And I
Too many good books to discover. Yeah.
yeah, because there's so much stuff out there,
Yeah.
cool stuff. And I read history books too. So,
Uh-huh.
I splash one of those in every once in a while. And but Malazan was the first series. When I finished it, I said, I am going to reread this.
Same.
Like right away. That
Yep.
I've never done that before. But I still had to finish off some of Esamon stuff, so did that. And then by that time, um I think Esamon had started the prequel series
Uh-huh. Yeah.
by that time, The Path to Infinity.
Paths
And
of Sentencing. Yeah.
so I read those, and I read Rejoice, by Erickson.
Okay, I haven't read
A
that yet.
blast. Yeah, that was a blast. I love that book. And but finally I was like, okay, now I'm gonna start the reread, and I'm gonna do it in publication order so I can mix in the Esselmont books.
Very official. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I made my way through that, and I'm on Dust of Dreams now. Uh and it's just amazing the stuff that I'm picking up that I did not the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I discovered BookTube, I'm getting even more out of it. I'm, watching all the videos that you and AP put together, and
Oh,
and all the stuff, all these stuff that a lot of other people have put together too,
yeah. Yeah.
uh, and so that's been really cool. It's been so informative. Um, it's been delightful. It's made me enjoy the series even more on a reread,
Sure.
and like it's funny. I don't know if you do this too, but I remembered a lot of the the bad stuff that happened to characters
Yeah.
more than I remembered some of the good stuff.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so I was kind of um trepidatious going into Dust of Dreams because I remembered the
Oh yeah, Dust of Dreams special.
horrible things that's happened to some of the characters there.
Yeah.
And as I started to reread, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of funny stuff in here. Like
Yeah.
the Malzahn soldiers and to Hole and Bug, and I'm like, there's a lot of great stuff in here. that's
actually really
really
uplifting.
cool.
I think the series is very uplifting.
Yeah.
A lot of people do emphasize the darkness, but I feel that not just the humor, but there's some beauty in that
Ve- Oh,
series that is just
gorgeous. Yeah.
so sublime.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm picking all that stuff up now. And there's actually a lot of information that's key to the series in Dust of Dreams too. And it's wondrous, and there's like you said, there's a lot of beauty in it. And I'm enjoying the heck. The reread is great. So I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Uh and I still read a lot of comics. Um I was a big collector back in the 90s,
Oh, cool.
comic
Okay.
books. I had, like those, like I got a lot of comics.
Which
And
comics? What are some of your favorite series?
um the back then I was into everything. I was into it started with fantasy comics
Okay.
in
Huh.
the late 80s. And so there was like a lot of independent publishers back then putting out fantasy comics.
Yeah.
ElfQuest being the big ones
So you're
that I
not
like.
talking Marvel and DC. You're talking.
Not yet.
Yeah.
When the 90s came around, I kind of got sucked into the superhero stuff,
Okay.
and I started collecting all that stuff too. But my favorites were always still fantasy comics
Okay.
and
Huh.
the more independent stuff. And of course I read Conan, a lot of Conan comics.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so and uh that's another author I like a lot. I like Robert Howe stuff a lot. He's very
Uh-huh. Cool.
he's very he's a good writer. And
Yeah.
he
I'm gonna
paved the
be
way
reading
for.
Conan the Conqueror pretty soon myself. So
Yeah. Is that the Jordan one or is that
no, that's actually by Robert E. Howard. That's the only novel length.
the novel one? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it sometimes just goes by a different title, but
Hour of the Dragon. Yeah. Yeah, that's
correct.
yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. But it's
and
also called Conan the Conqueror. Yeah. And it's
yeah.
only a couple hundred pages, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it's short.
otherwise all he wrote
Um
was the short stories.
right. And some of his short stories are very some of the best ones out there.
Uh-huh.
They're really well
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I read a lot of the comics too. And
Cool. Yeah.
I have a lot of them now. Back in 2000 something, I sold off a lot of my collection.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So and nowadays, um, I mostly have basically gravitated back to just getting some fantasy comic.
okay.
So
Yeah,
including the
I was an earlier comic reader, so that's what I began with, and I had from the late 70s to the mid 80s,
yeah,
and mostly Marvel, but some DC. I
yeah,
loved Spider-Man especially, and the X-Men those were my
yeah,
favorites.
yeah,
But now I'm actually getting back into it a little bit. I've been reading The Sandman by Neil Gaiman, just brilliant, as you know.
yeah.
And I've been reading some manga in the last couple of years. And now I'm reading this thing. You might have heard of it. I don't know, One Piece. It's sort of famous.
Yeah,
And I'm having a blast with it. It is so much fun. I
yeah.
can't tell you how much fun One Piece is. But also, there's some really cool, and there's a ton of illusions, tons of illusions. This guy who created One Piece, oh my goodness, he's read a lot, you can tell, and he
Mm-hmm.
just loves Oda. Eiichiro Oda is his name, and my goodness, he goes all over the place with his illusions, and he just has so much fun. And there are some serious themes in there too that he's exploring. So I'm
That's
having,
cool.
yeah, you would be shocked
Yeah,
actually how much fun this is. Like I am laughing constantly while I'm reading this, and I can't remember the last time I was laughing as much. So yeah.
that's great. Yeah, you know, and I really got into the comics, and the creation of them too. I wanted to find out how they were made. I wanted to know more about them, and I read. There's a book called Understanding Comics by Scott
Uh-huh.
McCloud.
Yes, I've heard of it.
That that book is fantastic because it not only explains comics, it explains the whole visual processing of images.
Wow.
in how we go about that. And it's any graphic artist should read that. It's really key for that kind of thing. And um, and I actually worked part time in a comic book store for a little while,
Oh, nice.
and
Nice.
I wrote like reviews for the store of issues coming out. So
Cool.
that was fun. That was a fun time of my life, and
Wow.
um,
That's
so
got to be
I
one of your favorite jobs ever, I would guess. Yeah.
yeah, it's it was fun. You do got to deal with customers, so
Yeah. People coming in the store interrupting your reading and that kind
yeah, you know,
of.
I got something important going on here. What do you want?
Yeah.
But no, it was just part time, one night a week or whatever. But it was
Okay.
fun, and I got into that stuff. And um, the time moves on. Uh, I have a long reading history. I'm older, so it
Yep. That's
it
one benefit to being older is you've got a longer reading history.
yeah, yeah. So it's cool, and I currently getting the adaptation of Assassin's Apprentice, and
Oh, good. Yeah, the graphic novel form. Yeah.
that is it's a really good adaptation.
Tell me about it.
If
Yeah, I'm curious
you
because
can
I
ever
recently, well, as in the beginning of this year, end of last year, beginning of this year, finished Realm of the Elderlings, and I
right,
love it. It's
yeah,
top three for me.
yeah, the
But
adaptation is
I'm
fascinating.
curious. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're liking it?
uh,
You actually haven't
because
read Realm of the Elderlings entirely yet.
that's correct. And what I'm doing is I'm reading the issue as it comes out, and then I'm reading the corresponding chapters
Oh,
in the book
cool.
go
Okay.
with the issue. So I'm reading it in a quite unique way that I
I
haven't
think
seen
that
before.
is interesting. Wow. Okay.
And I'm doing the comparison, and I'm actually writing all over the book, which I know some people would hate that, but but it's just fascinating seeing the adaptation and how good the adaptation is.
Huh.
It's and what the choices that they're making about what to leave out,
Interesting.
how to display the pictures compared to the prose, and what to include in the artwork,
Yeah.
and how much the artwork tells a story compared to what the prose is doing.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best adaptations I've read in comic book form. Uh,
Wow. Well, Robin
which
Hobb, I see her promoting it, so she must be pretty happy with it.
she's involved with it. Yeah, her name's all like not just Robin Hobb's Assassin's Apprentice. Her name is actually in the credits as out of the crew.
Okay.
So yeah, she's seems like she's heavily involved, and it you can tell because the adaptation is done with a lot of love. You can tell, and it's done very well. Because I've read other adaptations of books.
Yeah.
I've read I have an adaptation of David Gemmell's Legend.
Okay.
It doesn't do it justice.
Yeah.
It's like,
I've seen some
and
comic book adaptations of Beowulf, and they're pretty atrocious.
yeah, um, yeah. So it can be hit and miss with those adaptations, just like with TV adaptations.
Sure.
Everything can be hit and miss,
Yeah.
and but this is one that's I highly. It's very well done, very well done.
Yeah. Yeah, there's never been a good Beowulf adaptation really in film or in comics or anything that I've seen, unfortunately. And I'm beginning to wonder if it's adaptable. But
Hmm.
because a lot of the best parts of Beowulf aren't the central story, they're the side stories, in my opinion. They're thematically linked. So I don't know how familiar you are with Beowulf, but it's essentially a monster killing story if you just look at the main plot structure. Beowulf kills Grendel's mother, kills a dragon, and dies. That's it. Um, there's all this other stuff that gets woven into it, these other tales from uh, their ancestors' time. There are all these tragic tales, some heroic, but they're all interwoven into the main narrative, and they're all thematically. There's a reason they're there. They're thematically linked to the main tales. So you lose that in an adaptation for the most part. You can't convey that depth if all you're getting is the monster slaying, right? Um,
Right, yeah,
that may be one reason why there hasn't really been a good Beowulf adaptation, but adapting stuff is tricky. It's
it
really tricky.
is. Yeah, it is tricky. So that's why I'm always impressed. Just
Yeah.
people are able to pull it off in a manner that really reflects the source,
Oh,
and still make it entertaining. Because you can do exact source material
yeah.
and make your adaptation horrible because it's just
Oh,
not. It
like a
doesn't translate, you know?
slavish imitation
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of the
So
source material is usually not going to go well. Yeah.
right, yeah. So there is, all all kudos to the people who are doing this one because they're really doing it well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of writers dream of having their books adapted on the screen or whatever, but if it doesn't go well, like Ursula Le Guin, you mentioned earlier, one of my favorites, they attempted the Sci-Fi Channel did an adaptation of Ursi, and it was just horrible, and Le Guin loathed it.
yeah.
So
I saw that. It kept
be
me away from
careful what
Liquid.
you wish for. Yeah, as a writer, maybe
Yeah,
you don't want someone messing up your story, So I'm sure it's good that Robin Hobb is involved in that and not just approving of what they're doing, but it's guiding, it sounds like, in a way.
yeah. It seems that way. Yeah, yeah,
Huh. Yeah.
yeah. That Earthsea thing.
Yeah, no, I don't know anyone who likes that. So it's unfortunate too, because
It
I do
is. Yeah,
think Earthsea could have it is possible to have a really good adaptation, I think, of Earthsea. Um, but it would take the right person, I think, to do that, to pull it off. It does seem to make a difference when the person doing the adaptation is a fan. So Peter
sure.
Jackson, Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
brilliant, in my opinion. The recent Dune adaptation, Denis Villeneuve is doing brilliant, in my opinion.
Awesome.
Obviously, he's
Outstanding.
a super fan of Dune. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's you can name them, and almost always, I think the person behind it is a fan of the source material.
Yeah.
And
I
again,
think you need that.
they're not slavish imitations either. They're
No,
making
they're not. Nope.
interesting changes, and to me. I think that whether you approve of the changes or not, I think there are reasons you can discuss for those changes
Yeah.
that are compelling, like in the Peter Jackson case with Lord of the Rings. Okay, no Tom Bombadil, but really, yeah, I mean, I'm a fan. I love Tom Bombadil, but I don't think he would have helped the films do better because he's adapting that for a new audience, people who haven't more people have seen those films now than have read the books. A lot of people got introduced to Lord of the Rings through those films. And would have Tom Bombadil have gone over well? Probably not. For um,
Probably not. Yeah, probably not for only for certain discerning people, maybe. But
I mean, I would
it,
have loved to see Tom. I love Tom, and I know some even of the fans of the book don't love Tom Bombadil, but
yeah. No, he's yeah, he's divisive even with the readers.
yeah,
Uh, so
yeah,
never mind with a movie audience, you know.
yeah. I mean, and Jackson, I think he has some of the reverence that is in Lord of the Rings, in that is in the books. He has managed to give you a feel for, especially in the extended edition. He's given you a feel for that reverence, but it's not nearly as reverent as the original books. It's much
Yeah.
more action oriented than the books. That's
Yeah.
clear.
But
It's a movie, right?
but
Uh,
you could feel it though.
it's
When
there.
Fellowship came out in the theaters, and I went and saw that,
Yeah,
I had tears in my eyes, and it wasn't because the scenes were sad. I was
yeah,
just like, this is wonderful.
yeah,
I was like, why can't we have more movies like this? This is
yeah, yeah,
outstanding.
yeah,
And and that was in the moment of first seeing it, where
yeah,
you haven't had time to process it and learn it and figure out what he left out and what he put in and all that stuff. It was just that immediate reaction of this was something done right,
yep, yep. And we
and
seem to be in the midst of something similar with Dune, I think.
yes, I
The
think so too. I
the Villeneuve.
I I had that same reaction with the first Dune movie, seeing it in the theater
Yeah.
and going, "Wow, this is done." this is what
Yep.
we wanted, and it's definitely not exact, and it's definitely not, you
No,
know,
no,
uh, the perfect slavish adaptation you said earlier.
right.
But it has, you can just tell that somebody understood the material and made something into a different media that was
Yep.
perfectly suitable for what that media was going to bring to it.
Totally
And
agree. Totally agree.
that's,
I'm
yeah,
even a fan of some of the changes, to be honest with you. Like
yeah,
we talked about when we were
right.
on Gil's channel, do unicorns read? I like what they did with Chani. I think I'm a fan of that. I know some people are upset. Oh no, they made the woke agenda, blah blah blah. And I've heard all kinds of protests against those changes. But I like what they did with. I think she's a much more interesting character than in the books. Sorry,
Yeah,
that's how I feel. I think the film Chani is more interesting than the book Chani. So there are even some decisions that sometimes the adaptation may handle certain things even better than the original. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that. I do love the original Dune, but I think some of the things they did there really, for me, improved the story in some ways. In some ways, not. I still haven't really quite reconciled myself to the time compression in the film, where I think I would have been more convinced by Paul if he had been a little older by the end. Whereas, so instead of years going by, you get months going by in the film, and he's still a young guy, and I'm just not. The actor did fine. Timothy Chalamet, his name is, or
yeah,
Timothée, I guess you're supposed to say. But he's just too young for me to pull off what he's supposed to do there by the end of that film. Whereas Paul in the book was actually older by that time because years had gone by, not months. So, but that's whatever. I'm nitpicking. It's a great film. I love the
it
film.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a great film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, these things do come along, and they are both respectful, I think, and huge fans of the source material, but they are not afraid to make some decisions to adapt to the different medium and also for a new audience. I think it's something we fans of the books have to keep in mind that the filmmakers aren't just making the film for us, right? They're making the films for a new big audience that doesn't
but
include
to
readers.
broaden the audience, and
Yeah,
that's part of the great success of Lord of the Rings is
right.
it brought that audience in.
Big time.
No matter what kind of complaints that a purist might have
Right.
for the movies, that doesn't matter in this bigger scheme of things. It brought
Yep.
bigger audience into fantasy, and I bet you it brought a lot of readers in.
Yep.
And even if it didn't convince people to read, it at least convinced people that it was fantasy was a viable, marketable um, consideration for big ticket movies that have not only mass appeal but also critical appeal for and could win something like an Oscar or something like that, you
Yep.
know. And so that is the main important thing to get out of,
Yep.
and
That's
just
great. That's
bringing
great.
it to the masses. Yeah.
Yep. I even hear mostly from younger people, but that you'll encounter plenty of people who will say, I actually like the films more than the books, when we're talking
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings. And I'm not going to get upset about I'm the books for me are just, there's nothing like it. But if you like the films more, I'm okay. I'll still be your friend.
Oh, I still prefer books, but
Yeah.
so yeah, but like you said, I'm older, so that's it kind of
Yeah, I think
goes
that's
with the territory, I think.
that sentiment of preferring the film to the books is usually found among younger people, not people our age, which is interesting to me because I do think that expectations for storytelling in books have changed because of screens. In other words, people have much less patience for exposition and description than they used to.
Hmm.
They expect the pacing of a book to essentially mimic that of a film
Right.
or a television
Yeah.
series. which I keep reading books that I feel like I'm the author had a TV series in mind, rather than a book, and it's like, huh, okay.
Yeah.
And for me, as a slightly older reader, maybe, I feel like I'm missing a lot of the texture, a lot of the world. I'm in a like sometimes I'm in a white space, and there's action happening, but I don't really have a sense of what this place looks like because there's no description, and
Mm,
uh, so I miss that, and I
yeah.
know that.
Well, that makes me wonder, because I have a question for you is,
Sure.
will we see something like a Malazan or Wars of Light and Shadow again? We're going to see something like that in the future. Something
Wow,
that planned out, something that ambitious.
that
Um,
detail, that vast.
yeah, because
Hmm.
I mean, I hear a lot of I hear, there's a lot of trilogies and stuff coming out,
Yeah.
but is there something on those levels that vast that is going to be in the line that we're going to be able to consume as it comes out?
Well, I think Brandon Sanderson is attempting something in his Stormlight archive that, I think it more in terms of Wheel of Time, where there's some vast, cool world building going on, and some compelling character arcs. I don't think it's quite as it has. Don't get me wrong, it has themes in it and all that, but it's not as theme driven or idea driven as Malazan, or Wars of Light and Shadow, or even Realm of the Elderlings. That it's more like Wheel of Time. It's more entertaining, and that sort of thing. So, uh, but that's the closest thing I can think of that is being written right now, that has that at least that level of ambition.
Yeah,
And again, though, I think it's, yeah, I don't know. I
yeah,
don't know. I mean, I do feel that. I mean, for myself, I thought a trilogy was plenty for me to write. I couldn't
sure,
imagine. I mean, that involved a ton of world building. I'm
yeah,
maybe I'm
did.
as I'm a more old school kind of guy, but writing fantasy in the modern world compared to most writers, I probably did more world building than most, I would guess.
Yeah,
But
but it does concern me a little bit that we can't
yeah,
just name something like, oh yeah, this, boom.
yeah,
We had to think about it and go, oh wait, what is going on? You know, and
yeah. I mean, there
so
are
it's
ambitious series, but nothing that is as what's the right word? As serious, maybe, or I mean, I've only read 6 books of Dresden Files, for example, and that is a series that's 20 something and going, I think, by Jim Butcher.
oh yeah,
Um, it's very entertaining, the books that I've read, but it's not even close to the level of like thematic work and all of that. Now, I'm
right.
told it gets more so as the series continues, and it's a long series. Each book is pretty small, but yeah, I don't know. We didn't talk about Discworld either, which is
Oh yeah,
not a
I haven't read
continuous.
Discworld yet.
Oh, okay, yeah, not a continuous series.
Yeah,
It's a vast amount of books in that world that you
yeah,
can explore. But that's I feel like a slightly different creature from anything else, really.
yeah, yeah. And Neil Gaiman's one of my favorite authors as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and but he does a lot of standalone stuff. He does a lot of short stories. He does a lot of. He doesn't have anything on that scale that's huge,
yeah.
other than Sandman, which
Sandman would be his closest.
but
Yeah,
that's done,
yeah,
and
yeah,
um, so I'm just curious about that. If I just wonder if there's anything out there that
yeah.
is in the works. That
I'm sure some
uh,
commenters are gonna let us know.
yeah, right.
Maybe there's
That'd be great.
something. But yeah, I do think that, especially if you're a first-time writer, you're probably not even going to be allowed to write anything beyond like a
Yeah, right.
trilogy, maybe, or you have to prove yourself before you can get further in. But it does feel like readers are less patient, and that your chances of succeeding with a long sprawling, vast series
Yeah,
are going down. Your chances of succeeding are going down rather than up at the moment.
yeah. That was, I think, part of my point was the patience of readers seems to not
Yeah,
be at the level that it was
yeah,
years ago. Uh,
yeah, and that's publishers are constantly gonna want to cater to whatever they think readers
sure.
want. But yeah, you might have a point there. But who knows? We might be surprised by someone.
Yeah,
I'd like to be. Yeah.
yeah, great.
I can promise you one thing, Jared. It probably won't be me writing that
Ah, shucks.
15 book series with 1,000-page tomes and all of that. Um, I feel fortunate to have gotten a trilogy out, even honestly.
It's amazing. I think what you've accomplished with that is, I have the utmost respect for anybody who can even finish a novel, never mind a
Yeah.
trilogy, never mind even more than that. But I have the utmost respect for that. I've tried writing in the past. It's not my thing. Um,
A
and
lot of
I
work. A lot of
it
work.
is a lot of work, and I found I didn't like it, so I didn't continue. But it's a lot of work, and I have mad respect for all you guys who can write a novel, put it out there, and accomplish that on top of everything else that you guys do. And
Yeah.
it's great,
Well,
really.
thanks. Yeah, and you're one of the few who's actually read the entire trilogy. So yeah, thank you for that.
It was great. It was fascinating. I You did a great job, and I really appreciated all the you put a lot of nuance into it, and you put a lot of
Tried. Yeah.
of course I love history, and I can
Oh
tell
yeah.
that your love of history was in there, and it was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, this is my bag.
Yes, I am definitely a very even as a literature person because I'm a medievalist too. I think
Yeah,
I it's almost half history in a way.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
I'm definitely a literature reader who loves history too. I've read a lot of history
yeah,
within the context of giving me a sense of the world in which that literature lived and breathed. I feel like it does give you more insight into the literature by having that context, knowing what life was like a little bit, back in those times. So yeah, yeah.
very, very cool.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. We've had good times here as well, and I really appreciate you coming on to Dear Dr. Fantasy, Jared. And I'm expecting great things ahead on your channel. You and I will be talking at some point soon about the library trilogy, so everybody can look out for that. And we may have some other people joining us with that, I hope, as well. But I'm looking forward to it. And everybody, check out Jared's channel, The Fantasy Thinker. Of course, there is a link in the description for that. But one of the really kind and wonderful and insightful individuals here on our platform, here in our community. It's really great to have you around, Jared.
Oh, thank you. I blush. But thank you so much for having me on. This is great. I love talking to you, and I look forward to more discussions. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And till next time.